Welcome back. Let me start off by saying that part of this video is being overdubbed because I forgot to turn my microphone on and I didn't want to waste the footage. But what I did in this particular video was to set up my tablet to do a dual view so you could see me in the picture at the same time you see the object I'm working on, and in haste I just forgot to turn the mic on. So anyway, today we're taking a look at a Lenovo X1 Carbon that was given to me by a client who found it in a parking lot after he got done doing a job. He actually works for a tow company, and I guess it went unclaimed, and decided he wanted to take a look to see if he could fix it because the screen isn't working. It actually just has nothing on it. And you can actually see here, we think it fell off the top of someone's car because it has all these, this chunk taken out of it. You can actually notice the shiny bits there. This isn't plastic, it's actually a metal case, some kind of magnesium. It is a really nice light computer, and they are, kind of expensive, so I can see why he would want to see if he could try to fix it. It'd be nice if I could find out who the original owner was, at least, to let them know, hey, we found your laptop, but that seems like this is beyond that point now. And I see it does power up, and you can see that little black spot in the corner there. That's definitely, evidence of the LCD being broken. Also, the horizontal and vertical lines you could see there. And if you notice when I move this thing around, those colors kind of shift. We'll get into that later. But the logo over here is also falling off too, as you can see. And I also have to fix that as well, just to make it complete. But anyway, the subject of this video is going to be the teardown of this laptop. And we're going to start by saying that I have an anti-static mat down, I'm barefoot, and I have a wrist strap on. All precautions that need to be taken just to make sure you're not zapping anything in here with static electricity. And I'm using my handy-dandy iFixit tool set to fix this, of course. Off screen to the left is a metallic magnetized mat, I should say, that's going to hold all the screws in place, keep them from going all over. And there are 6 screws that I'm taking off, and eventually I figure out I left the 7th screw in that I'll take out later. But I go around, just take these off, and I'm pointing out my strap. I'm trying to do a commentary on this video as I'm watching it back. This is actually the 3rd or 4th attempt at this particular overdub. I'm sorry I'm not the best at this editing, overdubbing thing yet, but it's a learning process. And I'm going to point out a few things on this computer. There are a couple ports here. You have a headphone out, a display port, and a USB on that side. On this side there's another USB and a power connector, which is kind of the square coaxial style specialty port. We did have to go ahead and buy a power adapter for this too, since obviously that was missing. In the back here there is a SIM card connector, which is for the built-in cellular wireless internet. It doesn't have the card for it though, but everything else you need is there. Now the front of this actually comes off once you undo those screws. There's no access panels from the back. It all lifts off from the front. And it pops off really easy. You could do it by hand. Most of these old computers I've ever worked on have a little strip above the keyboard that has to come off, and then the keyboard lifts out, and it's a lot more involved. But using my little plastic opener here, you can see I'm just going around the edges, and it just literally snaps apart. This is where I realized that there's still something binding up in the back, which is just this annoying little screw, which I'll figure out right about here when it's not releasing. And at this point I flip the computer over and take that last screw right out. Now I will mention that the audio isn't synchronized necessarily. Later on you'll see the wireless camera in the bottom corner there has a bit of a delay, so you'll figure that part out later. But this entire thing is held together by this one connector, which as soon as you pop that off, it will completely free the top half from the bottom half. And I like that single connector idea. I think that's brilliant. A lot of, again, these other computers, you have one for the keyboard and one for the trackpad and one for the power button, and it really becomes annoying to have to undo all those different connectors. But it makes this kind of modular. You have all the different pieces on the back here, like the fingerprint reader, the little touch dot, the keys, the touchpad itself. The touchpad is actually very similar to Apple touchpads. It has that whole like clicky kind of feel to it. And you can see that these are all the different wires that attach to this circuit board up at the top here with just a singular flex connector down to the board. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. And yeah, I'm pointing out now that this is actually magnesium or some sort of lightweight metal. Probably not aluminum though. You can actually see by the support in here, all those like grid lines. That's there for stability. And well, that's the whole front piece. I'm going to just put that off to the side. Inside here, you can see the bottom half of this is all battery. That's the black kind of taped pieces right about here. There's a speaker on either side of it. The only moving part in this entire thing is the fan up there at the top. There are no memory slots. It's got 8 gigabytes of onboard memory. That's not expandable, obviously. And that entire board at the top is it. That's it. A tiny little motherboard. And it does have a built-in 180 gigabyte SSD. Either it's a M.2 connection or a PCIe or a SATA connection. I'm not really sure which one that's hooked up to, but this little spot right here is the cellular board connector. It doesn't have the board, but it has all the other facilities for it, like the SIM card reader. To get this thing apart, actually, we have to open up the case all the way back after I use my opening tool here to snap the top off. And that's just a matter of sticking it in and snapping it off, which is pretty easy. Just work yourself around. Again, my mic's not on, so you can't hear it, but it's just going snap, snap, snap as I go around the edges. The only part that's of difficulty is down at the very bottom where the hinges go. And you'll see I kind of struggle with it a little bit. Hindsight, I should have just closed the case and snapped it off from behind, which is what I'll do once I go to a cut in a little while here. But you just keep working your tool around the edges, and this thin plastic will snap right off. And it is very thin, and it's kind of on the flimsy side, so you do have to be very careful with it. Make sure you don't snap it. You don't want to force it out. But the one hinge came out really quickly. The other one not so much because it was being held in on an awkward angle. And that's where I'll go ahead and, cut the film and come back. Unfortunately, I don't have the best editing software right now, so you're going to have to kind of bear through me going through this procedure. My little facial expression you see me make there is a nod to Dave Jones over at the EEV blog. He always mentions having the tongue in the right angle just to get the job right. And my wife just happened to come into the frame here for a second to go check out the window. She likes to come in the room and check on me and pet the cat sitting on the chair behind me there. And she's being very quiet to not get picked up on the film, but I forgot to tell her I'm actually viewing the opposite direction. She actually comes into the room quite a bit when I'm doing these things. You just never really see her because, well, I'm usually behind the camera myself too, so you don't really see me either. But, I mentioned before in other videos that there's a lot of YouTubers that you see and a lot of them that I watch, so I decided, well, I might as well get out in front of the camera. You gotta make a presence once in a while, I suppose. But anyway, that video cut is coming up pretty soon. I'm actually watching this back at the same time you're hearing me record my voice, and here's the cut. Alright, so once I get into the case here, it was just a matter of actually shutting the lid and just unsnapping it from the back like I've mentioned before. Pretty easy once you do it the right way. Now, there were little pieces of plastic, kind of like electrical tape, like right along the edges here, that held it in place. I've already removed those. They just, it wasn't structurally holding it in. It was kind of just like keeping it from sliding out when you took this apart. But that's it. That's the whole LCD. It comes out really easily. There is this little flex connector, which you can either disconnect from the board or disconnect from the back of the LCD, which is a lot easier, which is what I'm going to do right now. It doesn't just unclip though. There is this little piece of tape here. It's actually quite sticky. The adhesive on it's pretty good. So it took a little bit of an effort to unpeel it, but once you get that off, it just pops off. It's a pretty easy connector to disconnect. That's it. And that's the whole LCD panel out. I do pitch the camera up right about here and hold it in front of the LCD light, the LED light that I have, and you can still see the liquid crystal kind of pooling up in the corner there where it snapped. Kind of barely, but you can see it. Yeah, there it is. That's a good way to tell if it's broken and not just something stupid like a connector being loose. So I'm going to go ahead and put that off to the side. And in the box, as you can see me starting to take out, is the brand new LCD. I will put a link to the vendor I got this from in the description below, as I usually try to do. It is in an anti-static bag, so I have to go ahead and take that out, of course. I already mentioned I got my wrist strap and my anti-static mat and the fact I'm barefoot, because these things are highly sensitive. You don't want to go ahead and shock it with static electricity, because then you just basically wasted your money. The one thing I kind of didn't really like, or let me mention first, there's the whole part in the bottom here that says don't touch. It's a pretty sensitive little board. But the part I didn't like about this is they put this masking tape over the front of it here in the corners. And that's just to hold that little protective piece of plastic on the front. And that tape was really sticky, and I felt like I was on my edge of the seat there trying to get that tape off, because this screen is so thin, you don't want to crack it. You know, I don't want another broken screen just because I took tape off. But once you get the tape off, you can just reconnect that connector. Of course, you want to reapply the tape that they had holding it in place. And it just slides in. Pretty easy. It only goes one way. Tape goes on. And then you just want to lay it in place. Now, what I did is took the keyboard and kind of made a dry run. I just hooked up the connector to test it out, because I don't want to snap this thing together to find out it doesn't work, because then you have to take it all apart again. So we're just going to connect the connector and hit the power button and see if it powers up. Now what ends up happening is we get nothing. And if you can see my face, I'm going, uh-oh. Oh, we got a white screen, but it should have something, and then it goes out again. Now I'm puzzled. This was actually really funny. I really wish you heard what I was saying right about now, because, well, anytime you see me twisting my mustache, you know I'm thinking, what the heck's going on? This is a brand new screen. Why is it not working? I have no idea. I'm kind of bummed. I was kind of hating life right about now, going, oh man, am I going to be able to fix this? I thought it was going to be pretty easy, and what's going on? Is there something deeper? I shut it off and decided to take another look at it. Turn it back on. And I get nothing. It's not lighting up or doing anything right now. And I am super bummed at this point. I'm kind of beside myself, going, what the heck's going on? And I know this is an LED lighting up on the other side, but that doesn't mean anything, because I don't have anything on the screen. So I'm going, what the heck is going on? What the heck is going on? So I decide I'm going to cut the video, and I can tell you right away, it's the flex connector. The little piece we disconnected going to the board, yeah, it was shorting out. There was something odd going on in here. And I figured it out. It was actually pretty easy. But I'm going to let this just kind of ride out in the background, just kind of laugh at myself here for a minute. And here comes the cut. And we got the screen up. Whew! Yeah. What a relief. Now, the whole endpoint security thing is another story. We'll get to that in a minute. But it was the connector, like I said. It was loose or shorting out. The piece in my hand I'm showing you right now is actually the piece of the case that broke when it hit the road or whatever it's scraped up on. And scraped up on, I should say. And it was stuck inside the case here. This is the connector that has the display port and has the USB connection and the headphone jack. And I had to undo a couple screws and pop that out of place. And behind that was the flex connector that goes up to the LCD and that little piece of metal. So that may have been shorting out against something. I'm not entirely sure. But I inspected that cable. It didn't look like anything was wrong. But as soon as I went ahead and reconnected it, it started working right away. I kind of figured it out because I was moving the screen open and closed, and it was flashing, and I kind of had a feeling something was just astray, and that's what it was. But Now this whole endpoint security thing, when you start this up, it comes up saying that the hard drive has full encryption on it. Then you get this lovely username and password thing that you have to enter. And I'm not sure if this is part of a VPN thing or if it's part of an enterprise system, or most likely it's some kind of enterprise IT thing. But the thing I hated about this is I don't know who this belongs to, and neither will the owner I'm going to give it to, because we don't have a username or password, or there's no logo for the company it belongs to, no contact information. There was nothing on this laptop, so I really don't know who this belonged to, which is kind of a shame. I mean, it would have been nice to say, like, hey, we got your laptop, you know, was this, what should we do with this thing? You know, I found it for you, or this guy found it. But whatever, that's beyond the scope of this video. It's more of, can this thing be fixed? And, well, as you can clearly see, the LCD screen works great. It's just a matter of, can I reinstall Windows on top of this thing for the guy and, you know, let him deal with the whole thing of who does this belong to and whatnot. That's kind of the unfortunate thing about this. Like, if you found a computer in a dumpster, did it come from the dumpster? Did someone throw it away? Did someone steal it and throw it away? I have no idea. So I'm not going to let that bother me. It's just more of, can I get this working for the person that gave it to me, is more of what the subject of this video is. And the answer is yes. Yes, you can get this working. There's no optical drives on this. It's only USB. So if you want to load Windows or any other operating system on it, you got to convert it over to USB first. But, well, that's what you'll see. You'll see me do coming up. I don't really remember what I'm talking about at this point, honestly. So I'm kind of just giving a little bit of filler right now. I don't like this endpoint thing. I was kind of mentioning, if I remember correctly, that my tablet has the lock screen on it, and you have to put a 4-digit PIN number in, as most of those Android devices have. But I decided to put my name and phone number and business name and all that stuff right there, so if you do open up the tablet and you get into the lock screen, you'll know who it belongs to, and you'll have a phone number. I also point out that my wife works for a company that has a similar system with this username and password, you know, whatever. But at least the company logo is up in the background, so you know who it belongs to. Again, I have no idea. I'm not going to worry about it, but this is actually going to do it for the overdub part of this video. Fortunately, I do have audio on the rest of this, so we'll switch over to that right now. Well, so far from what I can figure out, I can get into BIOS. There are some settings I can change to allow me to boot to a USB device, which is good. And that's basically where I'm stopped. Now, I went ahead and looked up this endpoint security. This is definitely some kind of an enterprise IT style program where this was set up by, you know, some, like I said, some, you know, enterprise IT company someplace. They went ahead and maybe set up a bunch of these clients, and a lot of this is like VPN kind of stuff where, you know, connecting to this is going to connect remotely to another system someplace, and well, we don't want that. I should actually go ahead and turn the Wi-Fi off on this, which is the little switch in the side over here. Worst case scenario, the person who gave this to me is going to have to go ahead and buy an SSD for it. I'm going to go ahead and try putting Windows onto a USB device, plug it into here, and see if it will let me repartition the disk. If not, I'm sure there's some kind of a tool I can download to do that. I don't care about the data that's on this. I'm not trying to get in there and look at stuff. It'd be nice if I could find a user or the company it belonged to, but why that's not here in the splash screen kind of annoys me. But, you know, there's no identifying marks on this. I mean, even the back, there's a barcode, and the barcode is just for the serial number for this, which if you pull up Lenovo's website, it tells you the specs about it. So that's kind of disappointing. Honestly, I'm not really a big fan of that whole hard drive encryption thing. I understand there's uses for it, especially if you have highly sensitized data you don't want somebody to steal. But in a situation like this, I'm not trying to steal anything. I just want to figure out who this belongs to, or wipe it off so I can give it back to the person who gave it to me and not be in a stalemate situation like I am right now. So that being said, I'm going to have to go ahead and try to load Windows on it via a USB drive and see if it'll let me get in here. Now, it does say it has full disk encryption on it, which probably means you can't do anything to it. So I will go ahead and try a couple things and come right back to you. Before I do that, I should show you how this thing boots up here. We can get into the where we need to get for the BIOS. We'll hit enter and we come up with this little menu. We can hit F1 to enter the BIOS utility, and here it is. Now you can see this has 8 gigabytes of memory, but it only has a 1.8 gigahertz processor. I mean, it is the Intel Core i5 V Pro edition. 1.8 gigahertz isn't really the super fast. I mean, considering my machine is running at a 3.2 or 3.4 gigahertz, whatever it's overclocked to now. And that's only an i3 processor. But this is third generation, as we can see by the 3427 number. It's a 4-digit number now. It used to be a 3-digit number when it was first generation. That's a video subject for another video. Now the UEFI secure boot is off, which is pretty interesting because most of these more modern systems like Windows 8, Windows 10 likes to have that UEFI system, and I think Windows 7 will work with it too, but they do have that turned off. I already tried go ahead and setting up defaults and restarting it, and that didn't really give me any other options. So at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and try doing Windows like I mentioned. Now it has a fingerprint reader, and it's been enabled, so maybe I can go ahead and disable some of that stuff. And you know, I'm going to reset everything on this. What I probably will do is disconnect the power plug, disconnect the main battery, and if I can, let me give me a peek under the hood here, I might be able to disconnect the system backup battery, which I had a laptop that was given to me actually by the same client family that gave me this laptop. I've worked on a few of their machines now already, and some of them I've done videos on. There was one video I didn't do, was how to reset a password. Unfortunately, I really wish I did the video for that one, but there was 3 passwords on the computer. One for the hard drive to get in before Windows loaded. Windows had its own password, and BIOS had a password, and the guy who owned the laptop got in a car accident and forgot the passwords, so he just had this dead laptop. And just from writing down different passwords that he used, we managed to get into the BIOS at least, but you couldn't change anything because there was actually a 4th password, which was the supervisor password. And unfortunately, he made them all different passwords. So to get the BIOS passwords completely reset, I actually had to go ahead and remove the battery and just let the thing drain out of any juice, and that worked. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with this. And I will also show you, since I don't really have anything else to show right now, the power connector. You can see it's this square, almost looks like a USB, but it's square with a singular pin in the middle of it, which is kind of nice because it doesn't matter which way you plug it in, up or down, the polarity is going to remain the same. And this thing is taking a charge. So other than the hard drive issue, which is a major issue, there is no other problems with this that I can detect. So if I can go ahead and figure out how to get Windows 7 on this, we'll be good to go. We'll see you in a few minutes. I figured I'd give it a little bit of an update while the computer is doing its thing in the background. You can see down here I've disconnected the main power connector from the battery, and then behind this is the smaller connector for the backup battery. What's actually neat about this battery is it's 2 separate cells, and if you look at the connector, there's a whole bunch of wires. Now I'm pretty sure this has got some kind of a balance controller in it. They're lithium cells, and well, that's a little bit more beyond the scope of this video, but I thought that was pretty neat. And it's a pretty thin battery too. It's just big, but it's very thin. But this is, all the electricity is, dissipated from this. None of the capacitors are holding on to anything at this point. So for all intents and purpose, I always say that wrong. Somebody corrected me the other day and I had no idea I was wrong. This should be completely cleared. And I have a program called USB to ISO running on my computer, and it's taking an ISO file of the Windows 7 installation disk and it's burning it to a USB memory stick that I can plug into this and hopefully can load it. We will see soon. I also went and popped the bezel back on this LCD screen so it's not flapping in the wind over here. And to do that, I had to open the screen up all the way, connect the top here, and start snapping it in place. And I snapped it and then came along the edges here, and then I kind of had to bend the plastic into the case here so the hinge covers kind of just fall into place, and then you shut the lid and then squeeze it from the back and you'll actually hear it snap in, and it's really nice and solid now. I should point out too, when I got this in my hands, it had a little piece of tape over the camera on the top here, because I guess whoever was using this was paranoid that somebody was probably spying on them, which is pretty funny. Okay, now comes the moment of truth. I got the USB stick. Get to reconnect the battery and power this sucker up and see what happens. I'm going to first plug in the backup battery here. Oh, I should put my wrist strap back on. Even though I'm barefoot and on a mat, don't want to take any unnecessary risks here. But now I'm going to go ahead and plug the main battery in. And I'll even connect the power supply here. Plug in the USB stick. And I do have to hook the keyboard back up. Now that's the checksum error and the real-time clock error, because this thing was reset. I wasn't expecting it to power up right away though when I plugged everything in here. That's okay. If I can get this connector on. Bear with me for just a moment. F1 for setup, and we have to go in here and set the date and time. It's funny how it goes back to 2001. It is 10:48, so 22:48, since this takes military time. And I need to get into the boot screen here, and we want to go to the option for the SanDisk Cruiser, which is here, which is good. And we need to move this up to the top, which looks like I should be able to hit up positive, or yeah, okay. You want to go positive. There we go. You have to hit shift and plus to get to go to the top, and we can hit F10 to save, and hopefully it'll boot to this USB stick. So far I don't have the encryption thing coming up, so it must be going off the disk. Looks like it's just in the reboot loop right now. Oh, here we go. Okay. So now it's going to see if it's loading the Windows files here. Hope this works. Now, I have to apologize for making this video seem like I don't know what I'm doing. I really don't know what I'm doing. This is the first time I've delved into this particular problem. I've done LCD replacements before in the past. That's not such a big deal. It's just opening the case and putting the new screen in. But the you know, the whole thing about this encryption and whatnot, that's the tough part. That's the thing I've never done before. But so far so good. I like what I see here. I'm just going to go ahead and hit next. And hopefully this will work. Now, what I'm going to have to do is it's going to get to the point where it's going to show me the partitions on the hard drive, and I'm going to have to delete the partition that's on here, which will allow me to install this system properly. And then once it comes up, if I can get this to come up, I can go ahead and install the drivers from Lenovo's website. Now you can see here it says disk 0 partition 1, 167 gigabytes. And it says its free space is 167 gigabytes too, because it's an encrypted system. If I click drive options over here, I can go ahead and select this and then hit delete. And then it tells me it contains, might contain recovery files, system files. Yeah, that's fine. We're just going to hit OK on it. and then I can hit new, and this is going to allow me to allocate that as new space, and then it's going to tell me it might create additional partitions, which is fine. Now you can click the touchpad on here. It's kind of touchy, literally. You can hear it clicks, but you don't have to click it. The slightest touch will do that for you. I'm assuming the light touch is the main click, and then the hard click is the secondary touch, like you know, right click, left click. Hey, so far it looks like it's working, so this is pretty exciting. It did delete the partition, and it's copying the Windows files over. So I'm going to let this go. Now I hear some beeping going on. I think it might be my tablet's battery dying. So I'm going to cut the film. This will take probably 20-30 minutes tops to do its thing, and I'm going to check my tablet, see if the battery's dying. If it is, worst case scenario, you just won't see my smiling face over here while I'm working on this and my expressions as I try to go through this. Oh, I am so excited right now. Now, actually, it was kind of funny. Both batteries were dying on the camera and on my tablet. So I just decided to forego the tablet and just look at the computer here and go back to our standard single view. As you could see, we got to the actual Windows installation here, and it's asking me for the username and all that great stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and set that all up. But this is good. This means that we're running off the SSD right now. We're not running off the USB stick. And the previous Windows version is completely wiped off this computer, as was all the user data. Unfortunately, hey, I don't know who it belongs to now, but I'm not really worried about that. That's not what I was intending to do with it anyway. If I did happen to find that out, great, but you know, since it was so encrypted, and yeah. All right, after about an hour on Lenovo's website downloading the drivers and leaving it overnight to do the Windows updates, I managed to get the system completely up and running 100%. In fact, it actually went and did the Windows 10 update. So if I go ahead and hit the power button here, I can show you how quickly this thing boots up. Now keep in mind, the only moving part in this thing is the fan. So there's no hard drive to spin up, which is pretty cool. You know, having an SSD in this thing is nice, and there you go, we're into a desktop that quickly. It's a very fast machine, being that, you know, an i5 processor. I'm really impressed with it. Just working with it for the last, you know, couple days, just really, you know, really turned me on to this company. I know I've used ThinkPads before, back when IBM made them, and I've never come across one like this. I have people, friends of mine, who own Apple products. And I'm not going to knock Apple, but just picking this one up, it's so much lighter. I mean, it's a very light machine. In fact, my tablet's behind it, and for the size of it, it feels like it's on par with the weight of my tablet, which is pretty insane. I don't know if I mentioned earlier or not, but I did have to use a USB to gigabit Ethernet adapter here because there are no Ethernet ports on this. You only have 2 USB ports and a display port and a headphone jack, and that's it. So it is minimal as far as ports are concerned, but you know, you have a built-in webcam, you got speakers built in this. It actually has Dolby Digital sound. You know, this is actually a really sweet laptop, and from what I understand, this is like one of the first generations, and some of the newer ones have touch screens and whatnot, and it's a really nice laptop. But it went ahead and downloaded the Windows 10 update and installed in like no time flat, really. And the Lenovo website actually had drivers set up for Windows 10 already for most of the parts of the computer. So it used the newer drivers, obviously, to do that. And well, that's really all there is to this particular device. I'm going to call the owner up, the new owner, I should say, and let him know everything's ready. And, you know, we'll take care of the payment on it. And he'll be very happy with this machine, the way it runs. He's actually been without a computer for a while, and he's been using one of his family members' computers or his phone. I don't really remember the whole story. But at any rate, this was a great learning experience. We had a little bit of a blunder with the fact that it had a encrypted hard drive, and it threw me for a loop. And the other blunder being the wire was, you know, a little off in there, it was shorting out. But once I got past that, it was a really easy build. You may remember from the footage earlier that, you know, it seemed like I was a little hesitant to what was going on, but you know, sometimes when you get into these repairs, you really don't know what to expect fully, especially when it's something you've done for the first time. I've done LCD replacements before, just never encountered an enterprise-based, I'll call it enterprise-based, encryption system like that. But hey, you know, there's a first time for everything. So I hope you learned something from this. I certainly know I did. You know, this thing is, I'd say, perfect. You know, there's nothing wrong with it other than a little tiny hole in the back of the case here where it was scratched when it hit the road surface, if it fell off a car. Whatever really happened to it, I don't know the whole story, and I don't think the person who picked it up does either. I did also fix the Lenovo logo here in the corner. The O part was bent and kind of like lifting upwards, so I had to take a toothpick and just slide it under, lift the whole thing up, and then flatten it out so it wasn't, you know, bent. And then I just put a little bit of super glue there and kind of spread it out neatly and just put the whole thing down, just let it sit and dry, and it came out perfect. And that's really all I have to say about this now. So I'm going to go ahead and contact the new owner and get him to, you know, meet me some point or drop it off to him and collect payment, I guess you could say. And, you know, give him the charger, give him the laptop. And I will recommend that he picks himself up one of these, you know, LAN adapters here, just in case he needs to do that. Because you can't always rely on Wi-Fi, of course. Especially on a machine like this. What I'm going to do is in the description below, I'll put a link to the Lenovo website to see if I do find any specs on this particular computer. I think it was the 3448 model. So I'll put that down there, what this includes with it. I'll also put a link to the seller that I bought the power pack and the seller that I bought the screen from on eBay, as well as the tool that I use, the USB to ISO tool, which was very handy to, you know, in taking the Windows 7 installation disk and putting it onto a USB drive. And luckily the BIOS that's in this, the UEFI system, was very intuitive, and I was able to go through and change the boot order to the USB drive and have it actually load right off with no problems at all. In fact, it was almost too easy. The only loop I got, like I said, was the whole encryption thing. You know, that was kind of made me sweat a little bit and go, oh no, am I going to get into this thing? And, you know, the wire, I was kind of panicking about that a little bit. But hey, like I said, this is a learning experience. That's how you figure these things out. So next time I'll have a lot better of a, you know, grasp on the situation when I go to open this. So with that, I want to thank you for watching. The last I looked, I noticed I was up to 26 subscribers, which is actually great. I'm very happy with that. But, you know, it's February right now, and I have a goal at the end of the year at least to get to 100 subscribers. So I'm over the quarter of the way mark, and, you know, I would like to say I would love to have a lot more than that by then, but, you know, given the course that I'm on, 100 is a pretty achievable goal. So if you're not already a subscriber, if you'd like to help me out in that endeavor, a thumbs up, a comment, a subscription, you know, the subscription button being clicked would be even better. But if you have things you'd like to see, you know, particular, you know, device you'd like to see tore apart, or a review of a particular item, or how to, you know, fix this, or whatever it may be, you know, try to suggest that. You can always contact me. I have a lot of projects I'd like to show you. It's just a matter of either, you know, buying the thing to review. You know, there's a lot of things I want to get in the shop here, or getting my hands on the piece of equipment to repair. You know, I'm going to start, you know, hitting the street a little bit here and try to get more business in, so I can have more things to show you too, because, you know, for everything that I work on, I'm going to try to do a video on as much as I can, and that's knowledge you're going to gain. So let's grow together. Thank you for watching. See you next video.